Majority Leader, you raise a very salient point, but I would want us to meet as leaders of the House and provide some guidelines as to how the dispatch box is supposed to be used. So I am touching the soft part of the heart of everybody. I'm saying everybody. Honourable members, if I'm touching the heart of everybody, I'm equally touching the heart of the minority leader. So that should not be interpreted to me otherwise. So that for today, we just do the needful and proceed, pending meeting the leadership of the House so that a guideline will be provided regarding the use of the dispatch box. Yes, Honourable Habib. I'll come to Majority Chief Whip.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Minority Chief Whip made an application to you to the effect that you, as the presiding Speaker, the first Deputy Speaker of the 9th Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, did rule that we on this side can use this dispatch board, it belongs to us. I don't know why we should continue to talk about
Honourable
it.
Habib.
So, Mr. Speaker, let him ask the question and we continue.
Honourable Habib, this is a house of record. Can you give me the date that I made that ruling? Honourable Habib, honourable members, order. Can you give me the date that I delivered that ruling? If you are unable to do so, being a house of record, withdraw the statement that I have delivered ruling that the minority can use the dispatch box.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, I am, for the fact that I cannot give you the exact date, does not mean I should withdraw my statement. And I'm not going to withdraw my statement because I did not say anything to offend our rules. So I am not going to withdraw it. If I cannot get the date, is it true that you have ruled on such matter or not? Is it that you have ruled on such matter or not? I'm not withdrawing anything.
Honourable Habib, the rules are very clear. If a member is misleading the House, it will become a subject matter of privileges. That is why I am giving you the opportunity. I cannot remember giving a ruling to the effect that minority can always use this side of the dispatch box. So do the needful.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, if it was not necessarily, Mr. Speaker, okay. Mr. Speaker, if it was not a ruling, that I take back. But Mr. Speaker, what I remember was that you were the one presiding when this issue occurred in Parliament. And at the end of the day, you allow the minority leader to ask his question. So if that was not a ruling.
If you wouldn't mind, I can give you time to produce a copy of my ruling. And if you are unable to do so, we invoke the rules.
Mr. Speaker, I just said, maybe you didn't hear me right. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I had said, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I had said, maybe you were not listening to me, that if what happened does not constitute a ruling, I take it back. But you were the one presiding when the incident happened, and you finally allow him to ask the question. That is the basis. But if it doesn't constitute any ruling, I take that back. But Mr. Speaker, I'm an elected member of this House. I cannot be threatened. I didn't come here by accident. I was elected here. So if I make an application, I shouldn't be threatened that rules will be provoked or will be invoked on me. The most important thing is that if that was not a ruling, I take that back. But you were the one presiding when that incident happened. And then you allow him to ask the question.
Honourable members, I will suspend sitting for 5 minutes and have a meeting with the leadership of the House. Sitting is accordingly suspended.
All right, and so just right now, the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Bernard Ahiafo, has suspended sitting to go into conclave to have discussion with both leaders or both sides of the House over the use of the dispatch box. The main issue under contention was when the minority leader, Alexander Afenyo-Markin, had wanted to ask an urgent question which has been scheduled to be asked the Minister for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry. And so right now you see there in your shot the clerk to Parliament having some discussions with the majority leader. And so in that process, when the minority leader was asking the question, the majority leader, Mahama Yariga, stood on point of order and read a constitutional or a provision in the standing orders of Parliament to make a case that the minority leader has no right to use the dispatch box to ask a question, and so he must use his microphone in front of his table to ask a question, and then the minister is the only person who has the prerogative to make use of the dispatch box to answer the question. That is what resulted in that confusion that happened, following which the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Bernard Ahiafo, has suspended sitting, and he's now going into conclave to have a discussion with the leadership of the House. You see the clerk to Parliament, Mr. Jethro, trying to whip them, or get the leadership to move so that they're able to go to have that discussion. There were a number of questions, at least on the order paper. You see 2 urgent questions that have been tabled to be asked the Trade Minister. She has been here even before sitting started, and so we're just hoping for it to get to her turn so that she can quickly get to answer those 2 urgent questions, as well as other oral questions that have been tabled or programmed for her to come to answer when all of this ensued. But prior to that, the minority leader had wanted to raise a concern over the detention of the former boss of the National Buffer Stock Company, and he was ruled out by the Speaker. The Speaker made a point that when it is time for urgent questions to be asked, no one needs to rope in other issues of national importance. That could only be done when it is time for statement to be made. And so that actually started this whole issue, because then the majority leader, Mahama Yariga, rose to his feet to make a case that Parliament should not be used as a means of settling national scores or for political scores, because then if people are arrested or detained and they feel that their rights are being violated, then they have that right to proceed to go to court to seek for variation of those bill terms which they deem to be onerous. And so the practice of the minority consistently trying to use Parliament to settle those scores should not be entertained. And that actually got the minority leader enraged, and then he just walked straight to the dispatch box. He started reading his question, which has been programmed for the trade minister. The speaker had wanted to catch his attention from the beginning of that. He kept on reading. At that point, we had the majority leader who was already on his feet, trying to bring in that issue about the use of the dispatch box to ask questions. And so right now, we are live from Parliament inside the chamber. Now you see the MPs engaging in some informal discussions. And indeed, when you follow how the proceedings have happened so far, you realize that most of the members of Parliament are clad in black, especially from the minority side, which that issue about the unfortunate demise of one of the minority MPs, MP for Akwetia, Ernest Kumi. And so you see a lot of them who are clad in black, especially from the minority side. Earlier in the morning, leadership of Parliament from both sides visited the house of the late Ernest Kumi to commiserate with the family. Both sides, leadership from both sides of the divide were present, including the clerk to Parliament, Ebenezer Jetro, who was also among them, who went to visit the family. And so they are back to undertake business. Let me run you through what we have tabled today by way of going through the order paper, what guides parliamentary business on a day-to-day. When you look at it, it's about 15-page document which tells you that today has a lot of things that have been tabled, that have been programmed to be looked at, and among them was to be the questions for the trade minister, a number of them really, some concerning some former 1D, 1F factories, some in Wale Wale, others in other parts of the country, the questions about how they can be operationalized, indeed, how those factories can be operationalized. And then the minority leader, Alexander Fiomakin, was actually going to ask the trade minister a question about the progress that has been made in the development of a comprehensive national agro-industry policy and how the ministry is intending to ensure that the policy translates into value addition, improved market access, and even export-led growth for Ghana's agricultural sector. And then the other urgent question is by Dr. Isaac Yawopoku, who is the MP for Offenso South, who was going to ask the Minister for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry what steps the ministry is taking to curb the resurgence of inferior cement into the market. And then there are a lot of oral questions that have been programmed for the minister to answer them as well. But already, even before we got to this stage, a number of statements have been laid or read the very first time, including some bills. The education minister has presented or laid two bills. One is the University for Development Studies Bill 2025, and also you have the other one, which is about the Ghana Scholarships Authorities Bill 2025, which is a bill that is seeking to, among many other things, ensure transparency and fairness in the award of scholarships to deserving Ghanaian students. The minister, during that presentation of the bill, both bills indeed have been referred to the Education Committee for consideration and report. So they would then have to report back to Parliament to more or less help in the consideration of it. Because then when you look at the Ghana Scholarship Authority Bill 2025, for instance, the minister has indicated that it has already received the gazetting, or it has been gazetted, and so he wants Parliament to take it under a certificate of urgency. What that means is that in a day, the bill goes to the relevant committee, especially the Education Committee in this instance, And right after it has gone through that process, it is brought back to the House, and within a day, it is considered read the second time, read the third time, and then the House passes it. Once it is passed and it is assented to by the President, then it becomes a law for it to be used. And so that was done. And then a number of audit statements concerning a number of tertiary institutions have been presented or read the very first time and referred to the Education Committee as well for them to be considered, and then they look at it. And so right now we are coming to you from Parliament. What has happened briefly by way of a recap or an update, if you just tuned in to TV3, is that there was an earlier confusion between the majority leader as well as the minority leader over the use of the dispatch box. The dispatch box is mostly where the ministers stand to answer questions, and especially when even some of the MPs themselves have statements to read, they walk up there to the dispatch box to read it. The minority leader went there to seek to ask an urgent question. He asked for the trade minister, and then the majority leader rose to his feet to make a case that per the laws and the standing orders guiding the proceedings of Parliament and how it works, it is not right for the minority leader to go up there to ask a question. He can use his microphone, the one beside or in front of him at his desk, to ask any urgent question that he has to ask, and then the minister, who has the prerogative, now walks to the dispatch box to answer the question. That resulted in confusion because then the minority again makes a case, and especially the first deputy minority whip makes a case that at least the dispatch box has two sides. And so the majority leader cannot dictate to them how they use their side of the dispatch box. Subsequently, what happens, and he even makes reference to rulings or some earlier rulings by the first deputy speaker, Bernard Ahiafor, in relation to the same issue. And the speaker made a case that if he is making reference to rulings that he made, then he should refer him to such rulings. Otherwise, he, the speaker, would invoke the law, and that was washed down along the drain. Right after that, the speaker made a decision to suspend sitting and then go into conclave to have a discussion with the leadership of the House, both sides of the divide. After that, we saw the clerk to Parliament, Mr. Jethro, rally all of them together, and they all moved to go to have a discussion. And so it's officially, right now, per the minutes the first deputy speaker gave, we can say about 5 minutes now that the House has been suspended temporarily for leadership to go to have a discussion or a resolution on how the dispatch box is used, and then they come back for the House to proceed. Then would have the question time for them to have the trade minister come to answer all of those important questions. But yet again, you see the MPs engaging in interactions. You see the health minister, Kwabraminta Akando, who is having a chat with some of the minority MPs, Professor Kinsley Yako, as well as even the minority chief whip, Frank Anodompre. You see the Bodi MP also in short as well. All of them are having some interactions as well as we await the return or the resumption of proceedings here. But the roads minister is here. A number of the ministers actually have some urgent questions that have been programmed for them to come to answer. And so we wait to see, but this also dovetails into the larger conversation about how and why Parliament has even adopted to extend sittings for the rest of the month until they go on recess, all because, and as was communicated by the leader of government business, i.e. the majority leader last week, it means that there are loads of work on Parliament right now which need to be taken care of, especially a number of legislative instrument LIs that would mature within the period, which are to be looked at and passed by the House for them to be assented to, and some of them are going to be considered under certificate of urgency. What that means is that if Parliament should sit during the regular days from Tuesdays to Fridays, some of these LIs would not mature before Parliament goes on recess, hopefully at the end of July. And so they've added Mondays and Saturdays to regular sitting days so that some of these LIs would mature. There is one particular LI about the petroleum sector, which wouldn't have matured if Saturdays and Mondays are not added to the extended sitting. And so all of these are some of the considerations that have been made which resulted in the extended sitting. And so at this moment, especially the majority side that is championing government business, their main motive is to ensure that most of these instruments or most of these bills are mature within the time and they are passed, and so as to ensure that government business is not affected in any way by delays or anything of the sort. And so that is what you see right now, and that is what is playing out right now inside the chamber. MPs are still here waiting for the leadership of the House to return from conclave, and then proceedings would resume. But it was just all about the use of the dispatch box, whether it is appropriate for it to be used to ask questions, or MPs who have questions can make use of the dispatch box to ask questions, or they should just use their microphones and stand wherever they are or wherever they are designated to sit to make or to ask their questions. That is what played out, that brought that confusion in the House, especially from the minority side between them and the majority leader, Mahama Yariga, and upon which the First Deputy Speaker, who is presiding over proceedings today, as of now, Bernard Ahiafo, suspended sitting temporarily to go into conclave with the MPs so that they are able to iron out the differences. And so that is it. But when you look at it critically, when you take a look at the order paper, you realize indeed that it's a serious business today on the order paper. And actually, there is another report from the appointment committee. You all would recall the scuffle or the chaos that happened during the vetting of the ministerial nominees earlier in January. You know, the Speaker, after suspending some MPs and reinstating them, went ahead to even form a committee that was to undertake a full-scale, full-blown investigations into all the event that happened. And so when you look at the order paper, that is featured, that report be read today and be adopted by the House. Indeed, I can say or confirm that for about a week now or so, that item has featured a number of times on the order paper but has not seen the light of the day. So we are just looking forward to seeing it taken today or whatever the outcome may be. But it is one that will be of keen interest to you, the viewer, also because of all the issues that came with it, and the Speaker of Parliament himself, Alban Bagbin, making a number of references to some of those issues and why MPs should be of good behavior and all of that. And so that one is also featured. That report is to be taken. And then even when you look at something like the delegation from Ghana's parliament to the ECOWAS parliament and even the Pan-African parliament, you know, earlier somewhere last week, that particular issue brought a conversation or a heated debate over the numbers, you know, the proportion. How many from the majority side go to ECOWAS parliament, for instance, and how many from the minority side go to the ECOWAS parliament, and the same for the Pan-African parliament. So leadership has met, they've deliberated on some of those issues and reconstituted the members or the delegation for both Parliament, the ECOWAS, the Community Parliament of ECOWAS, and the Pan-African Parliament. And so that item is also featured on the order paper for today. And then last week, the Fisheries and Aquaculture Bill was laid or read the very first time. And it is one that is seeking to sanitize the fisheries and aquaculture sector. It was read the first time and referred to the relevant committees to work on them and report back to the House. And you remember even last week, that also brought an issue about whether it should be taken under a certificate of urgency or not. And mostly when that conversation comes up about whether a bill or a statement or a legislative instrument should be taken under certificate of urgency, what the procedure would be for the committee that sits to look at such a report or bill to make that recommendation in their report that, okay, the House should consider such a bill under a certificate of urgency. And so, yet again, that one has featured on today's order paper, which means that if everything goes to plan, then the Fisheries and Aquaculture Bill 2025 would now be read a second and third time and be considered and should be passed as such. And so that is what we see, and that is what is going to happen when the proceedings should resume from here in Parliament. We are live from the chamber after that unfortunate news that we had yesterday, for which reason you see a lot of the MPs from both sides clad in black, wearing black. Then you understand what is indeed at stake. Earlier, like I've aforementioned, the leadership of the House, including the clerk to Parliament, the majority leader, the minority leader, the deputy leaders as well, all visited the household of the late Ernest Kumi, the late MP for Akwatia, to commiserate with the family and to share their thought with them, their prayers with them as well. And so that has been the situation. They were back to undertake their business. Okay, so I just see the majority leader walk in. It means that they are done with conclave. They are done with their meeting from conclave, and so the majority leader, Mahama Yarega, has just walked in into the chamber. He is back. Already see him holding some discussions with the MP for Pusiga, Ladi Ayamba, and other MPs as well who have gathered right in front of him. And so it is just expected that in no time the other leaders should be back in chamber so that proceedings would resume in earnest. But obviously some thoughts are being shared over there. You see the Roots Minister, the Adakulu MP, Kwame Gavin Sagboja, who earlier, has spoken about some road constructions, especially that one that has always been an issue about the Pokwasin Sawam Road and plans being made. All of that. He earlier in the day had that news, which we brought to you on TV3 on News Central. He is in chamber to undertake his business indeed, and so that is the situation here. And so the majority leader is here. We're looking forward to seeing the other MPs come in, and once they do, proceedings should resume in earnest. We wait to see the likes of Alexander Fenyomake, who was part of the leadership to go into conclave to have that discussion. As well as his deputy. I've not cited the deputy. Maybe I did not pay attention, but I know that the minority chief whip, Frank Anodompre, the MP from Sawama Duejiri, together with Habibi Dries and the others, all went out to meet the speaker to get a resolution really on the issue, the main issue of the use of the dispatch box, whether it is appropriate for MPs who have questions for ministers to use the dispatch box to ask questions, or they should just use their microphones and stand wherever they are designated to stand or sit to ask questions. That when they resume or when they return, we'll get what the ruling was or what the determination was concerning that. And so that is it. That is what has been happening in the chamber. A number of MPs are having discussion. But you see from the reactions or from the facial expressions of the majority leader who is interacting with the former defense minister.
Clearly, my colleague Christian Yali engaging with us on the happenings in Parliament there. He's still on phone with us to update us more on what happens to be a 5 minutes break, 5 minutes suspension that is turning out to be more than 5 minutes. We'll speak with Christian Yali to get to know how normal this practice is and whether or not the outcome of that all-important conclave meeting between the leadership of the House and the Speaker has been in relation to the impasse that necessitated this conclave. Christian Yali, it's been more than 5 minutes, like you're rightly reporting, but is it normal for a 5-minute announcement to go this long, or it depends on the matters that the leadership of the House are going to discuss?
The truth is that most often when it happens like this and they tell you that we are going on a break for, let's say, 5 minutes or a stated minute.
It usually goes beyond that.
Right.
It usually goes beyond that. If for want of a better expression, if you're not lucky, it can even go into hours, into an hour or more before they resume. So what we see play out right now is not new, it's not different, it's not a surprise. He said 5 minutes. Obviously, we knew 5 minutes wasn't going to work, because when they go into conclave and they have those discussions, certainly tempers would flare, emotions would come up, there will be disagreement here and there. So before they have a resolution or before they arrive at a conclusion, certainly it should take some time. Crosby.
The dispatch box. Talk to us about the arguments that were advanced by both sides of the House. Let's start with the majority. What was their position to this?
The majority leader, the MP for Boko Central, Mahama Ayariga, was not happy with the use of the dispatch box by the minority leader, Alexander Afeomake, to ask a question. He's of the view that per the standing orders and per the laws that govern the business here in the chamber, MPs use their microphones, they use their designated places to ask questions. Where they sit, where they are, they ask the question, and then whoever is programmed to come to answer the questions would...
So you were talking to us about the position of the majority. Now, for the minority side of the House, too, they are opposing this vehemently, and the disagreement has resulted in this conclave we're talking about, this 5 minutes break or suspension. But what were some of the key points the minority is raising as to why they oppose this idea?
Yeah, so the minority, for instance, when you listen to the first deputy minority whip, Habib Idris, he makes a case that, see, the dispatch box has two sides, really, which is the case. And so what it means is that the majority leader cannot always dictate how they, on the minority side, use their side of the dispatch box. And they make the case that this is not something that is new. Habib Idris actually goes ahead to reference or seek to refer the first deputy speaker, Bernard Ahiafo, to some of his own earlier rulings concerning the use of the dispatch box, and makes a case that if that's the case, per some of his earlier rulings, this is not something new that should attract any form of confusion or disagreement. And so that was the case that they sought to make, that they can, Alexander Afeomake is the minority leader, for Christ's sake, is a no mean person in Parliament for the majority leader to dictate how he asks questions and all of that. That was their main position. I saw a number of MPs on the majority side who were on their feet to more or less rebut or counter some of those which the speaker preempted could be a long debate, and so he decided to suspend sitting, so they go into conclave and discuss that issue.
Let's take a few steps back, Christian, into the happenings of the day. I'm talking about before sitting itself began with the arrival of the speaker and proceedings beginning today. Let's take a few steps back. We've already seen some footage from the television set in Parliament that seek to show that the House and I'm talking about leadership of the House as well as some members of Parliament. They visited the family of the late member of Parliament for Akwetia to sign the book of condolence opened at the residence of the late member of Parliament. Talk to us about that as well, Christian.
Exactly, and as it were, whenever some of these unfortunate things happen, you expect the leadership of the House of Parliament to visit the families involved, to commiserate with them. That is what actually happened. And Crosby, you know, and if you would recall, yesterday when all of this happened, the entire business that was programmed for the day could not come on because then the minority side whose member has passed on through the leader, Alexander Fiomakin, prayed the House to adjourn sitting in honor of the late MP, which call was supported or seconded by the majority leader, Mahama Yariga, who even made a case that when such a thing happened, the MPs in and of themselves could not or are unable to compose themselves very well to undertake government business or to undertake the business of the legislative body. And so both sides agreed in unison that the adjourned sitting to honor him, which was done this morning. And as it were, you had the leadership of Parliament, which involved both sides. The minority leader is seeing his deputies, the majority leader, his deputies, as well as even the clerk to Parliament and all those who matter so far as leadership of the House is concerned, and other members of the House all embarked on that visit to the house of the late MP for Akwetia, 40-year-old Ernest Kumi, to commiserate with the family, to get to share their thoughts with them. And actually a book of condolence has been opened in that regard as well. And you saw earlier in those shots that leaders took turns to sign that book of condolence to just share their thought. Yesterday, just like the majority leader had indicated, was not or was too early for paying tribute, which I believe in the right time most of the MPs would even get to do that, to pay their tribute to the departed one. But indeed, in that book of condolence, that is the good time for them, and they're able to even share their thought with the family and get to write all that they know about the departed member and how he meant and what he meant to the business of Parliament. Yesterday, few of those came up indeed when they spoke about the fact that when you look at the kind of energy that he came on board with during his very short stay in Parliament, when you look at how he fought to win the Akwetia seat, you know, all of these legal battles that have greeted his win of the seat, which case even traveled all the way to the Supreme Court for it to be determined. Then you realize that he's gone through a lot to win the seat or to get hold of the seat. And even when you cast your mind back, Crosby, to the day the 9th Parliament was being sworn in, the clerk who was presiding then, because they had not elected a speaker then, even made reference to a communication he had received, a letter he had received concerning that seat. And so we have traveled a very long way, all the way here, to get to this side for this unfortunate news to come up. And so it is one that has dealt the legislative body a heavy blow, and indeed, in as it were, they're going to continue to commiserate with the family, to be with the family until all is done and dusted. But you know that a lot of party leaders, a lot of his own colleagues, and even the former president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the former president, has even taken to social media to write about him, to pay a hallowing tribute to the departed Ernest Yao Kumi. And so that is what actually happened earlier today when the leadership visited the House to commiserate with them. We have heard of a number of reports concerning what probably might have, caused his sudden demise. And when you listen to the brother whom our Eastern Region correspondent engaged yesterday, Yvonne Nikwe engaged, and what he says about complaining of chest pains and the rest of them, then it paints a picture. And already discussions have, been reignited, even about the health status of MPs. Some of these things are mostly not spoken about until these stories come up. Then you begin to hear people talk about it all over, with some of the MPs themselves now beginning to wonder or think about how often they should take matters of their health more seriously, and why not and what not. So all of those have come up, but that is what has been the update. But Crosby, I can also tell you for a fact that I saw the first deputy minority whip, Habib Idris, enter earlier, and he's gone back again with the majority leader into conclave. It just means that you were asking me about 5 minutes. We are way beyond 5 minutes, and it's even getting more minutes by the day. But just like I tell you, this is not different. Usually 30 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes suspensions gets more than that. Crosby.
I see. And a while ago, I saw the second deputy minority whip, Jerry Ahmed Shaib, also coming into the chamber. He spent just about a few minutes, a few seconds in the House before he made his way out of the chamber. And you also mentioned that another deputy whip belonging to the minority side has also come into the chamber, and this time has gone out with the majority leader. You were talking about how important this conclave meeting is in relation to the impasse that the House is facing at the moment. Hopefully, at the end of this meeting, amongst the leadership of the House and the Speaker of Parliament, to be able to find a way forward on how the House would want to deal with this matter. Maybe some compromises will be made, maybe some trade-offs will be made subsequent to this meeting that leadership of Parliament are having at the moment. I will get to know how it will travel, what impact it will have on the discussions, what impact it will have on the debate that has been going on in the House up until the moment where the House had to be suspended for, as it were, 5 minutes. Hopefully, the conclave meeting will end soon, and we'll get to know what has happened, what impact it is having, and how we are able to, move forward concerning this all-important discussion of the use of the dispatch box that my colleague Christian Yali was talking to us about. But Christian, if you can know what are the likely outcomes of this meeting that the Speaker of Parliament will have or is having with the leadership of the two sides of the House.
All right, Crosby, so in some of these instances, you cannot tell what the outcome would be. And even before they went into conclave, the first deputy speaker was heard saying that he would want to meet all of them halfway, touch the soft part of their heart, all of them involved, because then whatever decision is taken would be one that would be binding going forward and would guide how the dispatch box is used going forward. And so it is one that whatever decision has to be taken would take a toll, or would come with that heavy impression or meaning, because even in the order paper, you see a number of motions, about two of them that the minority leader would want to raise about some rulings that were made earlier by the first deputy speaker himself, as well as even the speaker himself. So it means that when certain rulings are made and they are not made in the right direction, they could always go back to question them, especially when a similar incident arises or comes up. The minority side, or whichever side feel that they are being disadvantaged, could raise a question about that. And so it takes time for them to be able to more or less like come to a conclusion on matters like this, or on procedural matters like this. And that is what it means. And so it means a lot. It's something that means a lot. So decision that will be taken, obviously, a lot of the time they would have to reach a consensus, or they have to more or less, one side would have to give in. But whatever it is, this is a house of rules, and they are governed by their own rules. And so they would want to take a decision that would go in favor of both sides, and they're able to more or less like come halfway, meet each other halfway. But yes, the dispatch box holds so much significance, Crosby, because then whatever it is or however it means, when an MP or when a minister is scheduled to come to respond to questions or to answer questions, he would use that dispatch board. That is where they go to stand to more or less answer the questions that they've been asked. And so the case really of the majority side is that it shouldn't be used for asking like urgent questions, or any MP can just walk up there to use the dispatch box to ask a question, but they can just use or make use of their microphones. Once they are asked any questions, they just, or once they have any questions to ask, they just, turn on their microphones, and then they make use of that particular one to ask the questions that they have to ask. And then the ministers who are billed to answer questions will just walk up there to the dispatch box and then answer the question. That is where Parliament has designated for it to be used in answering questions. But because it is also a procedural issue, it means that they have to come at a conclusion. They have to get, a resolution that works for all of them, and it will guide how they do things going forward. Crosby.
Today. But Christian, we'll let you catch your breath at the moment because the House is on suspension, as it were. So catch your breath. We're bringing you business brief at the moment, and after business brief, when the House is resumed, we'll take you back to Parliament so that we get to know what has been the outcome of this meeting that the Speaker of Parliament, the leadership of Parliament, they were having with the speakership of the House as well. But at the moment, Business Brief is up next.
All right, Crosby.
Parents, mark your calendars. It's the 3FM Baby Fair happening